Morgan, the CEO of SalesFolk, and I'm talking today with Lincoln Murphy, who is the customer success evangelist at Gainsight and also the founder of 16 Ventures. Hi, Lincoln.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How's the weather? You're in Texas, right?
Yeah, it's sunny, but it's super cold for us.
Oh yeah, for Texas. At least we're both not in New York or Boston right now with that storm.
Well, yeah, definitely.
So my first question for you is, what's the first thing that you focus on when you're planning a sales or distribution strategy?
So this is one of the this is kind of a topic that's near and dear to me. I spend a lot of time on this. It's really coming up with your ideal customer,
Hmm.
and I think honestly that trumps everything. If you don't start with that, I don't know how you're going to be able to speak to the concerns or the issues or the opportunities that the people that are going to buy your product are having. I don't know how you're going to even figure out what the distribution channels are going to be. When you don't know who your ideal customer is, you're going to probably default to talking about your product, and you're probably going to default to the distribution channels that you're comfortable with. Both
Hmm.
of those things are sort of a recipe for either, if not disaster, just worse results than you could possibly get if you did it the right way, which is starting out with that ideal customer definition.
Absolutely. So you're at Gainsight now as their customer success evangelist. What attracted you to working with Gainsight?
So it's interesting. Customer success as a thing, customer success management as a product category. So products like Gainsight that are out there that sort of help you manage the process of getting your customers to be successful. It's all relatively new. And I was already helping a lot of SaaS companies grow. That's what I do at 16 Ventures. That's what I've been doing the last 8 years, somewhere around there. And over the course of helping lots and lots of companies grow through customer acquisition, as those companies matured and as the market matured and the industry and the investors matured, they realized that churn was kind of a big deal, right? So it's great
Hmm.
to grow through acquiring new customers, but we don't want to lose those out the back door. And then, once you start trying to mitigate churn, then you realize, wait a minute, we could actually be not just stopping those customers from leaving, but we could grow them. We could upsell and cross sell and do all this other stuff. And then you realize that actually that's all part of what we now call customer success,
Hmm.
ensuring that customers are achieving success with your product so that they'll stick around and so that you can upsell and cross sell more easily. And once that sort of gelled into this thing we call customer success, I gravitated to that because I'm like, okay, cool. Now this describes what I'm already doing. And in that process, I started writing a lot about and speaking about customer success. I met the guys at Gainsight early on when the company it moved from a different company called Jbera, and it became Gainsight. And about that time, I ran into them and did some work, kind of helping introduce them or get to my philosophy, at least, of what customer success was, what I was seeing with SaaS companies. I really liked the guys there, everybody there, and about a year later, I joined the company. So it just kind of happened like,
Serendipitous in a
totally.
way. That's
Yeah, but it
great.
came down to me already really liking what they were doing, their approach to
Yeah.
customer success, that kind of thing. I always tell people when I talk about Gainsight, I may be shilling for them. There may be an agenda, but rest assured, it was
You
already
were
there.
already an evangelist before
Exactly.
you became their
Exactly.
evangelist. Yeah.
Totally. So it's one of those things.
Yeah, for sure. No, I totally understand. So, on the topic of growth hacking, since I know you know a lot about that, what's one of the most innovative growth hacks that you've seen, and why was it so successful or effective?
So I'm always of the opinion that the best growth hacks are ones that we discover in hindsight. All the things like you go back to the Hotmail signature, right? That linked back, or every email that went out from Hotmail was basically an advertisement for Hotmail, and that was great. It wasn't a growth hack. That wasn't something they would have identified as that, obviously, because that was a long time ago. But in hindsight, we can say, man, that was awesome. That really increased the viral expansion
Hmm.
and what have you. So a lot of times it's the things that we don't really that aren't self-identified or
Yeah.
aren't identified at the time. So the way that I talk about this, because I'm one of those weird people that I don't want to give you a great example. I want to tell you more about what I've seen work,
Yeah.
and you can go out and look at all the different ways that this plays out. But one of the things, if you boil down all the most of the viral expansion hacks that have worked, they really come down to understanding what the network effect that's possible or that's happening the organic network effect is happening in the customer or the user's world. So, I work a lot in the B2B world, and you think, well, there's no viral expansion. I mean, that doesn't work. But then you look at things like Slack and Yammer and Box and all these sort of land and expand products out there. And you say, well, wait a minute, there was a viral component to that. And what happened was file sharing is the most obvious because I want to share a file with you. So I'm going to go use this product. And through the course of simply using it, I'm going to expose you to that product, right? And the companies that realize that, they're like, okay, this is how people actually operate. If we can facilitate not only the sharing of that file, but on the other end, sort of close that loop, then we might be able to get the person that was exposed to our product to actually use it. And you can start applying that thinking to just about everything you do. So as part of customer development, as part of your planning of the product, when you're out sitting with, hopefully you're not operating the vacuum, hopefully you're out doing this, right? You're observing the way that your customers operate, your potential customers operate. Don't just look at how they use Excel today to do their job that you're going to try to displace. Look at everything else that's going on around them. Who are they printing out reports for and then giving them to, right? Who are they interacting with maybe outside of the company? And how can we take our product and inject it into that process so that now everybody who would normally come to us for a printed report goes to this product and downloads the report or views it online, and now they're getting exposed to it. And maybe they come back and say, I'd like to have a license so that I can actually go in and do some of that work myself. Somebody that we may not have ever thought would be interested in having a license to that product. And so injecting yourself into the organic network of your customers, that's the greatest growth hack. And especially on a B2B scenario where it's like, you would normally think there's no virality potential there. And in fact, there usually is. And you can probably do something like that.
That makes a lot of sense. So on the flip side of that, what's a really common sales or marketing mistake that you see startups making, and how can they avoid it? Obviously, one that you already talked about is being too self-focused, and talking too much about your own product and the features rather than thinking about your customers' pain points. But what are some others?
So I just have to reiterate that is the biggest one. And if you go back and you look at a lot of, when I'm working with a customer or a client to sort of optimize their sales process, that misguided approach of being too self-focused, too product focused, and I can see, like, if I go to your website and the only visuals there are product screenshots, I could probably assume that you're more product focused than customer focused. Doesn't mean you have to have a picture of your customer on the website, although why not? Sometimes that's great. But a lot of times that just really, I can tell right off the bat that you're going to be product focused. And sometimes it's because we haven't gone out and learned about our customers, so we just don't have that knowledge. But then I'm like, well, who did you build your product for? And why did you build your product if you don't know who you built it for? But that's a whole nother story. So I think that misguided approach, it ends up permeating the entire sales process, though. So it's important enough to just, that's the main thing is making sure that you're focused on your customer, because you have the marketing website that is going to hook them. You have the free trial process as an example, the onboarding process, that if you're not focused on them, you're not focused on their desired outcome, right? What are they trying to achieve with your product, and how can I get them to that how do I deliver first value to them as quickly as possible? Then you're going to do something like, I just had a company the other day told me we're trying to dumb down the onboarding process. And I'm like, no, that's not you don't dumb it down. That's and that tells me a lot about
how they see their customer. You need to make it human and relatable. It's not like, right. There is some element, I think, of like the idea, make it clear enough that like a fifth grader can understand, but that's not necessarily about dumbing it down. That's about taking the core values and the core action steps out of your onboarding process that are the main events in your funnel, and focusing just on that and not 20 other things. So each message or step is a focus on one thing, not three things.
Absolutely. And I think so, it goes back to like when we have a really complex product, I hear that all the time. Our product is too complex. We can't simplify it. And I'm like, that's not a badge of honor anymore.
Yeah.
Okay? And it never really was,
Yeah.
but in some circles it might have been. It's about simplifying. And what I say is, look, your customers are not dumb, but they are distracted. They are busy, right? And so it's about giving them just what they need. And so then it goes back to knowing what they need. So, as much as I'm going to stick to that one thing of just knowing customers, but it permeates every aspect of the sales process. And then, of course, the ongoing process from there in the customer success. But, in those early days of your relationship with them, it's all about letting them know that you understand them and building that trust. Because as soon as they come into your product, the first in-app experience is either overwhelming or there's so little to, you don't know what to do. That really sets the tone for your relationship. And if that's not good, if they do become a customer, those seeds of churn are planted very early in the relationship, and they'll sprout sooner rather than later. So make sure that you're managing expectations all the way through by understanding your customers. So that really is the main thing, the biggest mistake, and then it manifests itself in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, so my next question, you're making me think about email campaigns. And so, as you know, we do email campaigns, mostly cold, but some drip. And one of the simplest ways to improve your email campaigns that we have found are just really having one idea per email. Whether it's drip, whether it's cold, focus on one idea, one call to action, one main thing, not like 2 or 3. And so I know that you also know a lot about crafting effective email campaigns. What other tips could you add to that?
The one call to action is absolutely huge, and you see that all the time. And so I think if we're talking about sort of maybe the activation emails or the drip that right after somebody signs up for your free trial, as an example, those are huge. Just making sure that it's very clear. That call to action ideally gets people back into the app to take the action. So you're not just telling them what to do, and then you're not just going to show them how to do it, but get them right to the place where they can actually do it. That's huge. From there, I think it comes down to probably being a little bit more aggressive than you're comfortable with. That's one that I get a little bit of pushback on, because especially from more technical founders who may think of email as spam. There's just but most. I have to remind people, you're not necessarily your customers.
Yeah.
You have to know that, right? Maybe you are. Maybe you're selling to other technical folks. But if you're not, then we have to understand that your customers are probably different from you.
Yeah.
Which means you probably really want to get more aggressive than you're comfortable with, because you're comfortable with very little, right? And so, and what I say aggressive, I have to sometimes preface that with positively aggressive.
Yes, absolutely.
We're not trying to be overwhelming. We're not trying to spam people. Spam, by the way, is really unwanted email. Forget about the legal definition. It's just people define spam as something they don't want. So don't send people email they don't want. Right?
Add value. Add make it interesting. Have a positive value to it, not like obnoxious, self-serving crap.
Exactly. And so know your customers, right? You may send people emails that are educational, but still have that call to action to get back into the product. You may send them a very terse email that is just like, you need to do this, go back, because you know that that's the kind of email that they would want to receive. You have to know your customers. I tend to keep all the emails in a drip campaign, certainly, but even ideally, they're not just timed, right? They're actually triggered based off of activity. I want those to be less designed, not always looking like they're coming from a human. Sometimes it's okay to come from a system, but I want them to be very just to the point. So even if they're educational, if they're a little bit longer,
very short,
to the point. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we have to, again, going back to the idea that people are busy and distracted, and we really just want to get them to that next step. And so I try to craft an email follow-up campaign around milestones, what I call success milestones. I want to get somebody, where that first value delivered in the product, where they're really they found some level of success. Maybe that's when we consider them onboarded. Well, there's things they had to do to get to that point, and I want to craft that email follow-up campaign around those success milestones. And I know if they've done this and this and this, that the next one they have to do is this one. So the email that they're going to get today is going to be trying to get them to take that next action. And when you do that, it becomes very simple to create a campaign around that. But yes, so simple, to the point. And this goes back to making sure then you have to understand your customer, right? You have to understand what they're trying to achieve, what their desired outcome is, even during a free trial. I always ask my clients, and just anybody that talks to me about a free trial, I say, well, what does a desired outcome for a free trial look like for your customer? What does a successful free trial look like? And they'll think, generally, they convert. It's like, no, that's success for you. What does success look like for them? And that really gets people thinking. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot that they're actually still evaluating, right? They're still trying to figure out if this is the right approach. And so you have to understand what they're trying to achieve, and how can we work that process, and by the way, still get them to actually use the product and get them invested, so that at the end of the trial, they just keep moving on, and become a customer. So there's a lot going on there, but simple, one call to action, just like you said, but try to get them back into the product and be a little bit more aggressive than you probably feel comfortable with.
Awesome. That was really great. I'm completely on board with everything you just said, and we've seen it work dozens and dozens of times with every client. So on a related topic, since you were talking a lot about drip and customer onboarding and basically more of the inbound side, where do you think the future of outbound email is going?
Yeah. So I think outbound email has certainly become very popular these days. It's certainly with like predictable revenue and folks like you talking about, right, and doing the work for people, which is amazing. And I think it's become popular. I think in some areas, and I saw Aaron Ross tweet this the other day, in some areas, especially in Silicon Valley, it might be starting to be a little bit overwhelmed. The number of outbound emails that people are getting, or number of cold emails that people are getting, starting to be a significant amount. But I think outside of Silicon Valley, there's still a lot of greenfield right now to be able to go out and do the outbound cold emails. So I think they're going to work. But I think the rules, certainly I came up with 7 sanity checks, that I apply. I think you've written about this too. Make sure that you do some research. I mean, it's so simple to just do a little bit of research. I tell companies that are trying to do this, look, if you don't, for your small, you should always be segmenting your prospects.
Yes.
If you have smaller companies that you're trying to reach out to, maybe you don't have, it just doesn't make economic sense to sit down and do a lot of research on each one, but maybe you can segment them into various categories.
Exactly.
And, have some.
No, and even if you're not doing like a unique email for each industry, you can write a custom insert around the industry. So if like you have SaaS and you have
like healthcare.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can have a phrase for each one that you're appending in, so it's at least like, because the problem is, okay, you have 2 extremes. One, you have one-on-one emails, which are not effective, not scalable, not enough ROI, too much time. And then on the other side, you have very generic mass shitty emails that are surely going to spam. So you don't want to do either one, but what you want is some combination of the two where you're spending minimum time and like scraping, segmenting in smart ways, but also making it very personal, because when it's too generalized and generic, and you get the emails that, we review on our blog with the critiques that are, hello, Heather, we know that you care about SaaS. Like, who gives a shit when you hear these very generic, vague things versus very clear statements and questions that are very relevant to me and my business? There's a big difference in whether or not I hit spam, delete, or if I reply. And so you want to, as much as possible, just get specific without spending a lot of time. So I think custom inserts that are at least industry segmented are usually worth it. And I think different email for different persona, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, we're sending to human beings.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think it's so crazy that that's something that I have to continually remind people of.
I know.
But, that's what we have to do. So, a couple of things, little tips that I say is just make sure, like if you're sending to a technical crowd, they're going to be looking for things, what blast indicators, things that make it, is it saying sent by or sent via, in Gmail,
Yeah.
or is there an unsubscribe link? Was this those little things was there a tracking beacon, or is there a tracking link or are your links being tracked so that if you're using Yesware or something like that, that people are opening your emails. Technical folks will tend to pick those out, and as crazy as it sounds, that might hurt trust with them. So sometimes you have to say, you know what, for that particular segment, I would rather not have the tracking and have the trust and really build a relationship with those folks than being able to track it. So you have to know your audience. I'm not saying to take, go Yesware. I love that, and there's other products like it, but I think you just have to know your audience. That's a really big deal.
I think especially though, on that point, I think there's something that people really overlook a lot, and you'd be surprised how many large, successful companies do. You want to be doing mail merge, not sending from MailChimp or something where it's forwarding the email. Number one, it does not inbox the same way. Number two, it says, sent from MailChimp, and
right.
all of that. So, it might work if you're emailing, no, it wouldn't even work with my grandma, actually. But, I was thinking, no, it wouldn't work with her even. So, if it's, highly untechnical, maybe. But if you're emailing VP marketing, you should definitely not be sending them blasts from MailChimp. And I see so often we'll get a prospect who's interested in working with us, and they'll say, we're using MailChimp, we're sending 10,000 emails. And I'm just like, what?
Right.
What? And you're getting less than 1% response, and the reason is that you're not taking the time to personalize and make it human, and you want to blast in such mass from MailChimp. Right.
Well, and you also see this with some CRMs, Salesforce. Marketo does, so you really have to be careful. And you have to set up, even on Gmail, there's things that you can do to help. So, you set up your SPF and all that, so that you have your email infrastructure set up technically to make sure that it's that everything is trusted on the back end, and that you do end up in the inbox. This is one point real quick on this that I like to make. A lot of people will say, help me, I'm sure you get to help me figure out a template to use. Help me write a template. And I tend to say, why don't you just write an email?
Yeah.
And then
one-on-one and reverse engineer. Yeah, and reverse engineer. No, I feel the same way, because I've had people who took the template I wrote for Aaron Ross's SQL, which is a very specific use case for a very specific SaaS company. Right. And basically they were copy and pasting it and hardly changing anything. And they said, you know what, your template doesn't work. And they were in the insurance industry or something. It was just absurd. And I agree. Even when I'm writing the emails, there's certain formulas I use, but I'm not using strict formulas. I will actually pause and take someone from the list of who I'm trying to target, look at their LinkedIn for 5 minutes, and write an email I was trying to get into the account, and then work backwards and reverse engineer that email. It's
amazing, right? Yeah. You just start out by writing an email to a person. And that's the other thing I've seen some threads like this on different places, growthhackersinbound.org. They're like, what's the best cold email that you've ever received? And I always think it's funny. We actually receive a lot of cold email, maybe not every day, but during the week. But it's such it's just from another person.
Yeah, you don't think of it. I wouldn't call I'm technically cold emailing people when I just reach out, hey, I read your blog post, da 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 da. And even sometimes I'll templatize that, because I like to give credit where it's due and foster those relationships. But those people wouldn't think of that as necessarily a cold email. And that's if you're doing it right, the best cold email is not one you would even think of, because it's probably just a request from someone who became your friend even.
Exactly. It's funny. We don't categorize those emails that we get that are just emails that we got. We didn't know the people ahead of time, but it's just an email. So that's what you want to do. You just want to write an email. It's still cold, it's still outreach, but I think we need to stop thinking of it like that when we're creating them. There's just those few points there. But the future of it, as soon as it gets saturated, I think the future also just, some of the things I like to do are, and a lot of people will skip this step. And that's the other, I mean, a lot of people skip steps. I'm a big believer in not having a very big ask in the very first email. Like,
Yeah.
don't send me an email. Like, you don't know who I am.
Yeah.
And you want to jump on the phone for 30
Yeah.
minutes. No, not going to happen. But if, have a small ask, start with an open-ended question, something, build a relationship.
No, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
people want to
Social engineer. I usually call it social engineering. So like the first one or maybe even two, you can just make it more conversational, a question, an idea, something, not have that call to action, and then include it in the follow-ups. Because you can't go the other way around. You can't
No.
like, hey, I want to get you on the phone, and then, oh yeah, by the way, I just want to ask you a question. What do you think?
Yep. It's so amazing. I mean, you go back and look at the emails that you didn't like or you didn't respond to or you thought were cold, and they're the ones generally that are going to have that big ask. Hey, I don't know who you are, but let's get on the phone for 30 minutes and I'll tell you about my product. Like, what? You don't understand how really asking for 30 minutes of my time is just such a big deal.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'll give my friends, like, I mean, I'll just sit there and have a conversation with people. So it's kind of funny how, like, it all depends on how you treat me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you respect my time? And again, it's going back, not having somebody, they're not being like egotistical or like, I'm so important. It's like, I'm so busy, right?
Yeah.
Your request simply does not compute.
Yeah.
Like, I can't make that time. And we have to be cognizant of that and be respectful of it. But I think so. Maybe doing some warming of your leads before you email them, taking their email address, creating custom audiences on Facebook and Twitter, and getting your brand and your image in front of them. Not even asking them to like click on anything, but just kind of be there. Doing IP targeting if it's a big enough company, or IP retargeting basically, so that they're seeing your message. That can work. And then doing it right. But I think the other biggest problem is that people try to jump the line. They try to instead of working the process through several emails and then getting to that ask, they're like, I'll attach a video and ask for a 30-minute call.
Oh my god, I hate those.
No.
I hate, and you know what? They're so lazy too, because I feel like there's this new mentality where, oh, I have a video, I don't need to explain what I do. No, you shouldn't be explaining what you do in a wall of text, but you should have one sentence around the benefits. A video, just because you made a video that looks cool doesn't mean that I'm going to spend 5 minutes listening to you rattle on about yourself.
But it's an explainer video. I shouldn't say anything else. Right. No. Yeah. So I think it comes down to just being respectful.
Totally. No, I think these are all amazing points. You took the words from my mouth and you put them in a very eloquent way that was in my head that let them free. So I enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Okay. I love it.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate your time, Lincoln. I'm Heather Morgan of Salesfolk, and this has been Lincoln Murphy from Gainsight and 16 Ventures. Thanks for listening to another Salesfolk interview. You can visit us at salesfolk.com. Thanks.